Hey everybody! I'm in lumberjack mode today because it is freezing here. I thought the Christmas moose would be a nice addition to the lumberjack outfit. Today we're going over 15 signs of a codependent relationship. I thought that was probably a good follow-up for yesterday's uh, what's wrong with a person who falls for a narcissist video. A lot of people don't really understand codependency, so here are some signs of a codependent relationship. Number one is there's a lack of genuine and honest communication. One of the reasons for that is typically the codependent or giver in the relationship, when they do try to express their genuine and honest feelings or needs to their partner, the narcissist or the taker, um, they get shut down. And a lot of times that's where gaslighting can come in. If you try to question something about their behavior, they blow up, they get defensive, uh, they turn it around on you. You're just being suspicious. Why do you always have to question me? Things like that. So it gets to the point where the codependent or giver just doesn't even try to express their communication or question anything because anytime that they do, they get met with anger or that turnaround of blame. Number two, you need approval from your partner. And that comes in a variety of ways, but in one of the ways is your actions are directed in a way not to satisfy your own needs, but to satisfy the needs of your partner to maintain their approval. And again, a lot of times this comes out of relationship patterns that we have with a parent or a caregiver in our childhood. And so it doesn't feel it doesn't really hit as a red flag initially because it's something that's kind of comfortable to us. And in our subconscious mind, it's just part of being in a relationship because that's what we had with that parent or caregiver was that we had to adjust our behavior for their approval. And another way that can come through is needing approval just to have your own life. Like if you want to go somewhere, you want to do something, or you want to buy something, like they have control over all these different aspects of your life. And you have to get their approval to do things or get met with that anger and blame and that whole mess of anything they don't approve of, don't agree with, and a lot of times even they'll accuse you of things when you didn't ask their permission first. Number three, self-care becomes selfish. So along those lines, anything that you want to do for you is selfish. Mind you, anything you want to do for them is not enough. So, and you can do as much as possible for them, and it generally is not so much appreciated as it's an expectation. And if you decide that you'd like to do something for you, then you're taking away from them. Even if it's just wanting to go relax and have a hot bath, you're not there to dote on them. And that's selfish. How dare you? It's unrealistic expectations that you're just going to give everything that you have to this other person, including your identity, because it's almost like the narcissist absorbs the codependent person, and you end up being just a supporting part of their life instead of having your own life. Number four, you feel the need to save them from themselves. And this is something that, especially with a covert narcissist who plays on empathy, compassion, um, they tell you about how horrible their childhood was and all this wounding that they carry. And, they come across in a way that is like they need to be rescued. And on the flip side of that, a lot of times also, the codependent relationship can often involve substance abuse or other toxic behaviors where the codependent giver is trying to save, rescue, heal the narcissistic taker. And the problem is that they don't really want to be saved or rescued. They just like the fact that you're so into them, that you're so wrapped up in them, that you're going to give all this energy to them, and they're giving nothing in return. Number five, you have a hard time making your own decisions. And some of this goes back to that needing approval. Because if you've ever been in a codependent situation where you try to make plans or you try to uh, do anything without their input, their opinion, you're wrong. And so you become very indecisive because you're afraid that if you make a decision, then you're going to end up looking like an idiot because you're going to have to go back and tell the person, I'm sorry, I couldn't do that, or they've done something else and now you're in a bad position because that communication is not there. And so, like, for example, let's say you decided that you were going to give some old furniture to a friend. And when you tell the taker, oh, I'm going to go ahead and give that to Kathy because she needs a couch. They're like, well, I already told so and so I was going to give it to them. And that kind of thing where, so this is another way that they manipulate you into giving over your control, giving over your power, is because in an effort to avoid looking stupid all the time, you start asking them before you do anything. So it really feeds into that not being able to make your own decision because you never know what's going to happen if you do. Number six, you feel like you can't say no. And that's definitely a, when you're in a relationship with a narcissistic taker and you tell them no, they are not going to accept that well because you're not allowed to have boundaries in that relationship dynamic. And again, this goes back to the parent-child interaction and how that relationship wounding from the past plays into it because as a child, you really don't get the opportunity to have boundaries because everyone around you is in charge and you're not. So again, this is something that can actually feel normal to our subconscious mind so we don't get that red flag. So if they tell you that they want to buy a $5,000 camera, and you say, well, we really don't have the money for it. Well, last week you bought shoes. How much did you spend on groceries this week? Like you're the one running the budget all to hell because you bought food or you had to replace your shoes. And now you're being selfish by not letting them buy this $5,000 camera. So that's just a situation like an example of that situation where when you do anything in opposition to what they want or what they want from you, it's you get back into that gaslighting, blowing up, anger. Um, Number seven, you have abandonment issues. And this is something that, once again, comes from that childhood wounding. And if you had a situation in your childhood, and this could be something that happened before you even have memory, um, as infants, if we're left to cry it out, like if your parents left you in the crib to cry it out, because I know for some of us, depending on when you were born, when you were raised, that kind of thing, the parenting advice was, "Oh, let them cry it out. They'll learn to self-soothe." Which, in fact, when an infant cries, they're asking for help. They're asking for comfort. And if that comfort didn't come, that could actually have created an abandonment wound. So here you are, 20, 30 years later, and you have abandonment issues, but you don't even realize it because you don't remember any time that you felt abandoned. And it's in your subconscious mind. So the abandonment issue is just when you think someone that you feel is significant to you is going to leave your life, it creates almost the fight or flight response, that stress response, because in your subconscious mind, it's a survival thing. You need other people for survival, but it's because it's triggering that abandonment wound from childhood. And in reality, in this dynamic, you really don't need that other person. You're much better off if they do abandon you, but they won't. Number 8, you have trouble being alone. And when we have difficulty being alone or being in quiet environments, many times that indicates that there's unhealed issues within us. Because if we don't want to be left alone with our own brain, then there's something going on there. It even could be that you don't have a feeling of trust in your ability to provide for yourself, to care for yourself, that when you're alone, emotions start to come up that you don't want to face. And ironically, the best way to deal with that is to be alone, sort through those emotions, sort through what's causing this fear of being alone, and fix it. And fix it in the sense of finding out that you can provide for yourself, finding out that you can take care of yourself. When you are able to 100% stand on your own 2 feet, you no longer have abandonment issues. You no longer have a fear of being alone. And it's getting to know your inner self, healing your wounds, going through this healing process where you realize I'm capable 100% on my own. I don't need anybody. That's when you're truly ready to fully be in a relationship, a healthy, interdependent relationship, because you don't feel a need for the other person. Instead, you have a desire for their company. You just enjoy them. And so, if you have trouble being alone, get to know yourself better. You may find out that you're pretty darn amazing on your own. Number 9, you feel lost when you're not with the other person. And this comes after some time, because when you go back and you look, it's trouble making your own decisions, needing approval. So when they're not there, you have a lack of direction. You're not really sure what to do because they're not there to tell you. And if you do the wrong thing, you're going to have to deal with their wrath. So it's really not necessarily that you feel lost without them as much as you've just gotten conditioned to being told what to do in every moment. And you're afraid to make a decision because if you make the wrong decision, then you have to deal with them. So that's kind of a mixed. Number 10, you have low self-esteem. And by golly, anybody in a codependent relationship, if you didn't have low self-esteem going in, you sure will. Because one of the things about the codependent relationship is that the narcissist sees the codependent giver as an amazing person and how capable they are because the narcissist is looking for a caretaker. So they look for someone who's strong, capable, who's giving, empathetic, caring, loving, kind. And generally speaking, the narcissist knows they don't deserve you. And that when you realize who they really are, you won't want anything to do with them. So they start systematically breaking down your self-esteem because what starts as like a friendly banter, it starts to get more cutting and more negative. And it's a slow progression into gaslighting. And because of the way that they love bomb you, then they pull it all back. Then they love bomb you, and they pull it all back. So you end up in this cycle of thinking that things have changed. Oh, no, they haven't. Things have changed. No, they haven't. You're not crazy. You're not stupid. It's emotional manipulation, and it's playing with the childhood wounding and attachment patterns that you've developed from a parent, a guardian, someone significant in your life. But at the end of the day, because you're constantly being blamed for everything that's going on, and they're giving love, pulling it away, giving love, pulling it away, Of course you have low self-esteem. When you live that every day, it starts to mess with your reality. Gaslighting really messes with your sense of reality and has you questioning your own perception. And so now not only do you feel like everything is your fault, you also don't know which way is up or down. You can't make decisions. I mean, you're really getting in deep at this point with the whole messed up mental and emotional state. That's why this is abuse. Even if they never hit you, this is abuse. And number 11, you often cancel plans with others to be with them, and they expect you to. That's probably why you do it. Because you know that if you choose to go with your friend instead of spending time with them, they're going to accuse you of everything under the sun or give you a guilt trip about how you chose them over me. I guess you don't really care about me. I thought I was important to you. And start that whole cycle of victim, they're the victim, you're evil, and the guilt trip that comes with it. So it's easier to cancel the plans than to deal with that afterward. Number 12, you can't set boundaries. We kind of covered this a little bit earlier. But when you try to set boundaries, they will do everything in their power to push past them. And it can be something ridiculous, but they are not going to be told what to do. Absolutely not. If you say, especially, in having time for yourself, and having money for yourself, and having anything for yourself, they're going to infringe on that as much as possible. If you say, look, I'd like to have an hour each night to just sit down and read, for no reason other than just to not let you have a boundary, they will sit next to you and talk, or make noise, or interrupt you, or, you know, any little thing where you try to set a boundary, they're going to push it, push it, push it. They see it as a challenge almost. Number 13, you feel trapped in the relationship. And a lot of times, especially in the violent, uh, codependent relationships that have ended up with domestic violence and physical abuse, when a narcissist feels like they're losing control, they will do everything in their power to try and get you back. And one of the things, that's another reason they don't like boundaries, but one of the things that happens is when you start to put your foot down and say, look, I'm not going to tolerate this kind of behavior, I will not put up with this, they'll change for a while until they feel like you've settled back in and things are good. And then if you do actually leave, they come after you and they send you flowers. They try to be sweet and loving and wonderful. Now, in the situation with someone who's like a narcissistic, sociopathic, at the extreme end of the narcissistic personality disorder spectrum, they will stalk you, they will threaten you, they will harass you, and it's terrifying to live that because you never know where they're going to pop up, what they're going to do, and it can be very dangerous. And as I mentioned in yesterday's video, if you're in that situation, get help. Get help because someone who is that extreme is very unpredictable. And when a narcissist is losing control of a person who they view as property that belongs to them, they go to extremes to correct that to the extent of if I can't have you, no one else can. And there's a lot of homicides in domestic violence situations. And again, I'm not trying to be an alarmist. I lived that scenario and I know how dangerous it can be. So please don't try to do it on your own. If you feel ashamed of the situation, there go to a victim's advocate, go to a shelter for women, go to the police department, go to someone who can help protect you, that you feel will understand what you're going through. Because so many times there's victim shaming. Well, why didn't you just leave? Okay, it's not that simple. For someone who hasn't been in that dynamic or who doesn't understand that dynamic, it's not that simple. And victims judge themselves because to the outside person looking in, it doesn't make any sense. But it didn't start that way. And there's a process of complete annihilation of the codependent giver side of their self-esteem, of their values, of their mentality, their emotions. Everything has just been torn to shreds. And so someone who hasn't experienced that or hasn't been trained to understand that is going to judge the situation like, you must be insane. And so a lot of times victims have trouble seeking help because they feel that shame and guilt. Your life is more important than your pride. Once you get in touch with the right people who understand and can help you, you know, that's that's powerful. And you need to have protection during that time if you're in that type of dynamic. Number 14, you feel anxious when you don't hear from them. And this again is that having trouble being away from them. It's just that when you don't hear from them, you never really know what's going on or what kind of catastrophe may be coming or what kind of blow up or, it's just there's so much uncertainty and volatility in this type of relationship that when you don't hear from them, God knows, especially when there's substance abuse involved, they could be laying in a ditch somewhere. You have no idea. It's just constant chaos. And number 15, you have a history of codependent or abusive relationships. And again, this could be a parent, a caregiver. It could be something that you develop this pattern. It could even be a sibling, anyone close to you that you've had a deep emotional connection to that developed into this type of relationship pattern. Because there are codependent parents, there are codependent siblings, and those can turn abusive as well. So think about the dynamics or some of the things that we've talked about here, the signs of a codependent relationship. And if that would apply to previous relationships you've had in the past, that could be an indicator that you have a susceptibility. And again, it's subconscious. It's not like you're choosing this, consciously choosing this. Your wounding attracts their wounding because that dynamic can play out again. And sometimes it's if you had a parent who is codependent or abusive, and then as an adult, we reenact that relationship in an effort to get a different outcome. Because then in our mind, we appealed that first relationship. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's how the subconscious works. We're trying to repair that relationship pattern with a different outcome. And unfortunately, in codependent relationships, very seldom you get a different outcome. Because truly, a narcissist is not aware that they're a narcissist. And if you try to tell them that they are, it doesn't go well. Just put it that way. They're not into awareness. They're not self-aware, and they don't want to be made self-aware, especially not by you. They're probably not going to be very accepting of that information. And really, there has been a big debate over whether or not narcissistic personality disorders can be fixed. And in the psychology world, where even if the person agrees to go to treatment, there really is no treatment for that condition. It's really just the person being aware of how they act and then correcting it of their own desire. And typically that's not been very successful. So the best thing that you can do if you're in this type of relationship, you cannot save them from themselves. You can save yourself from them. And that would be the most beneficial choice that you could make. And it will have the best return on investment because the more you give to this person, what happens with a narcissist? They will suck you dry. And then when you are mentally, emotionally, financially broken, Well, you're not a very good source of energy anymore. You're not a very good caregiver anymore. You're no longer taking care of them or meeting their needs. They'll throw you away and find someone else. And there you are, left to deal with the aftermath of all of this garbage, and they're gone. Now, they won't want you to move on, but that's a different story. That goes back to the whole you belong to me scenario. But yeah, it's just because codependency has become a term that's thrown around a lot and it's used to describe a lot of dysfunctional behavior patterns. I'm wanting to help with the awareness of recognizing that you're in a potentially damaging relationship. So I hope this helps. I will talk to you soon. Love and light.
Hey, would you describe yourself as a people pleaser? Do you have trouble setting boundaries? Do you just feel exhausted from taking care of everything and everyone around you and feel like you always come last? Have you just been kind of going through the day-to-day motions, but you're not really living? There's just no passion, there's no adventure, no fun in your life anymore? Then this is the offer for you. If you'd like to make 2023 the year you become unfuckwithable, and just for fun, I've got the definition here, when you are truly at peace and in touch with yourself and nothing anyone says, does, or thinks can bother you. Meaning that you are so firm in your power and so certain in who you are that no outside influence can deter you from living the life that you truly desire and deserve. And if that sounds like the way you'd like to live, click on the link below to get more information on how you can make 2023 the year you become unfuckwithable and start living the rest of your life as the best of your life.